Let's try this again. My name is Tucker Johnson. This is Nimdzi Live. You are experiencing Nimdzi Live together, and now my microphone is actually working. So, welcome to the show, everybody. This is Nimdzi Live is an event where we like to talk about the latest and greatest in translation, localization, internationalization, all of those shuns that global brands need to know in order to delight their international customers, or at least not to piss them off too much. On this program, we invite guests who like to have fun and also have some value to add for our audience of globalization professionals. I'm always eager to provide a platform for those with a good story to tell or a good data set to share. So let us know if there's any topics you'd like covered or guests that we should reach out to for future episodes. Really quickly, if you're here and you haven't done so already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit that follow button, hit that like button, whatever it is. But if you're not doing that, then chances are you might not be aware of future live streams that come up and future events that we hold. A little bit about the platform before we get into it here. We are, of course, doing this on LinkedIn, Facebook, LinkedIn Live, or Twitter, all of these different things. So there's many different ways to engage with us today. But I want to draw your attention over here to the comments section. Daniela, I hope you got in. If you're hearing me, then you got in. Anytime you'd like to ask a question or just network with the audience, you can put a comment here. It helps if you tag me, Tucker Johnson, so that I can see it. If you'd like to talk with your colleagues during the event, have a little side conversation, head on over to this networking tab. It's a pretty cool system that LinkedIn has here now that they've been revamping their whole thing. I can't get going on a live stream without plugging at least one thing. But today what I'd like to plug is actually not another event. Well, I'm going to plug another event too, but wrong button. I'm very excited about this new book. Yesterday in the mail, I was surprised with this new book, Mujeres en la Traducción Audiovisual. And this is co-authored by a friend and colleague, Belén Argullo Garcia, my friend. I know, thank you, Renato. And of course, her co-author, Carla Botella Tejera. And I'm going to be diving into it, but my Spanish is a little rusty. I highly encourage you guys to check this out if you're out there. Belén is a consultant analyst here at Nimdzi. During the day, during her day job, I say, but she's doing really exciting stuff out there. So go learn about that. Likewise, I wanted to show you guys an event that we got coming up next week. And if you like what you see here today with me and Renato, if you like that dynamic between the two of us, then you can see a repeat of it next week. We're going to be joining our friend and colleague Adam Asnes for the Globalization in 2022 and Beyond webinar, which is going to be hosted, of course, by Lingoport and free, of course, to register. Go on over there and make sure that you're registered so that you get notified when that happens. But today, without further ado, I don't have a lot of times. I kind of have a scripted approach to this when I'm interviewing folks. But today, I don't have much of a script because I'm being joined today by my co-founder, my co-author in my book that I've written, my co-founder of Nimdzi Insights, my business partner, and my friend, Renato Beninatto. And I'll just talk a little bit about Renato Beninatto. I know he's perfectly capable of telling you all himself about how great he is, but let me tell you how great he is. I met Renato Beninatto when we were working in an LSP Moravia, before it was RWS Moravia, and I like to say that do I like to say this on the live stream? Yeah, well, why not? Hashtag authenticity. I like to say that we didn't work closely together, but we made the same enemies. And there's no bonding experience quite like that. And one day I got a phone call from him saying, Tucker, I want to write a book. And I said, good for you, Renato. What does that have to do with me? And long story short, it wasn't that much longer before we had published our book, The General Theory of the Translation Company, which has gone on to be somewhat popular around the world. It's been adopted by different universities, master's programs focusing in translation and localization, especially translation and localization project management. And out of that, of course, was born Nimdzi Insights, which has become Nimdzi Insights. Right, so if you're watching this live stream, then you're already aware of Nimdzi Insights. But Renato, welcome to the show. What did I miss? What did I forget to plug?
Happens sometimes.
Yeah.
In your feed, you put too much music.
I need to
Listen to the music of our words. Anyway, thank you, Tucker. It's exciting to be talking about this, and the topic of this conversation is essentially the Great Renegotiation, an article that I wrote on LinkedIn, essentially, and had a lot of drag and attention from the industry because it's a little bit controversial. What I'm advocating is that companies should be increasing their prices instead of this constant drive to the bottom that some people complain. Other people talk about commoditization. And I laid out some arguments and situations where, or justifications for moving the conversation from reducing price to increasing the price. And what drove this was that part of our service here in Nimdzi for our clients, we have this, I like to call it applied research, but it's essentially office hours that we have where our clients can schedule time to talk with any of our consultants in the organization. And 4 of the conversations that I had in the previous week were about, our clients are asking us to reduce our prices. And
yes, same here. Same here. I've been having quite a few office hours, either talking about pricing strategy for an LSP or rate pressure to increase rates from their suppliers, or pressures to decrease rates from. Everyone's talking about pricing right now.
Yes. And it's the time of the year. It's natural. We're getting to the end of the year. Companies are preparing. By now, they should have already prepared their budgets for next year. And somebody in the executive suite of an LSP, which is mostly the case, tells the vendor management organization, go negotiate with the vendors a 10% reduction in cost, 15% reduction in cost, or whatever arbitrary number comes in, so that the company can achieve the margins that they need to achieve in the following year. This has become even more predominant now that the majority of the top LSPs in our industry are owned by private equity. So instead of being driven by relationships and emotional connections and love for language like some of them were in the past, these companies are driven by margins and KPIs and covenants, which is a term that some people might not know. Essentially,
What do you mean by covenants?
The covenants has nothing. It's not a religious term. It's just what are the numbers that the company needs to hit to be able to maintain a line of credit. It's when your company borrows money, they have some conditions. So you need to have this level of profitability. You need to have this level of margin, this level of capitalization, and so on. So there are some financial metrics that are part of a loan agreement, and those are things that the executive teams who are not involved in price negotiation, who are not involved in the day-to-day activities of the project, need to hit to keep meeting the goals that are given by the owners, the investors, and the other people in the organization. So this order comes from above and say, hey, we need to reduce price. And a
lot of times, like, without even really, I've spent a lot of time, as have you, on the vendor side. A lot of times it's somewhat frustrating because the pressure to the downward pressure on pricing, a lot of times it doesn't have like actual justification behind it. It's just we expect X. And that always gets us into sticky situations because we feel that pressure. LSPs feel that pressure to decrease their prices. Translators feel that pressure to decrease prices. And what happens is it creates an unsustainable environment. And in the end, lots of people will lose. A lot of more mature buyers out there, I've actually seen this happen, where you submit a proposal and you're trying to beat your competitors on price, and the procurement will actually come back and say, are you sure about that? Are you sure you don't want to raise your prices a little bit? Because we're in this for the long haul. We don't want you committing to a certain price and then just going bankrupt in 6 months, because then we all lose.
And the conversation again is based on usually on assumptions that are made by people who are not doing the job, who are not executing, who are not in the front lines. And this is the big uh, disconnect, is that we keep negotiating. It's the wrong people negotiating with the wrong people. So this conversation needs to be a conversation that involves all parts of the business. It starts with the end client understanding that they're not buying words. Words is just what we use to invoice the jobs that we do. It's a metric that we use to invoice clients. But what clients are really buying is international growth on their side. It's international expansion, customer satisfaction for existing customers, and things like that in languages other than English. That's one thing. That's what they are paying for, and this is what they're buying. But they're also buying peace of mind in the sense that they're buying people that are managing those resources, that are managing a budget, managing a timeline, and making the trains run on time, right?
Right, right.
And these are all very, very hard to quantify, and they are all embedded in the cost per word. And
Well, it costs per and project management fees too, which is a whole different can of worms. I don't even think we want to look at today. But project management fees, I know there's a lot of strong opinions out there on those. But hey, Renato, before we get too deep into this, because you and I can just talk all day. Let's try to add some structure to this. I want to take it through like the history and current state, and then go into our projections for the future. So maybe for those of our audience that are watching out there who are just getting into the industry or still learning about the industry, talk to us a little bit. What do you mean per word pricing? Like, what does this look like? Have per word prices, have they gone up? Have they gone down in the last 20 years? How have they been charged? What have been the events or the trends? You like talking about trends in our industry.
Well, they haven't gone up. They have either stayed the same or gone down. But they have not gone down as drastically as many people believe. There are niches and there are areas, absolutely. There are situations where prices have dramatically decreased. But in general, prices have been stable over the last 10 years. But stable in a environment with growing inflation means that actually the value of each cent that you get for your word is going down. It's not if it is not keeping up with inflation, it's going down. So pretty much you can say that there is a depreciation of the value of the word going down. But that's not the biggest driver in cost. I think that one of the biggest drivers in that challenges the conversation is this elusive and fictitious productivity increase because of technology. And we can have a very long conversation here about the role of technology in the process, but there is a difference between the role of technology in the process and the role of technology in the language. And machine translation being the elephant in the room, there is this idea that machine translation can be a replacement and machine translation is cheap. And because you're using a lot of machine translation leveraging content and you're not doing real translation, you're just the human in the loop. I don't like this expression, but this concept of the human in the loop is that the human is just checking the work that the machine does.
Why don't you like that expression?
Because what is it actually in the loop is the machine. It's not the human that is in the loop. It's the machine that is in the loop.
So you prefer to think of it as like tech-enabled human beings rather than like, oh, I still need a human in order to.
Exactly.
Because human in the loop to me has
by
like
the
an
way,
element
Tucker,
of yes.
there is people like to talk about the exceptions a lot, and one of the comments that I made in the article that I wrote is that a lot of the productivity increases that people propose are real, but they're real in an artificial environment. They're real in a lab. They're real in a simulation.
Right.
But when you go to the market and when you're actually doing the work, you find out that uh, machine translation and technology in general actually slows you down rather than increase your productivity, because the size of the projects has reduced significantly. So you're getting an average project that has 35 words or fewer than 100 words, and then you have to process that into different systems, and you have a lot more non-translation related tasks that you need to report on that are not paid for, because the only measure that we're using is translation.
Right.
So we need to take a different look at the process, and there is an opportunity for pushback in when it comes when essentially what I want to say before we go into the framework here. The attitude that we need to start in the to have in the industry, the first thing to do is when somebody asks for a price reduction, you say no. It's as simple as that. We are driven by fear in this industry, and we're afraid to say no because somebody else is going to do cheaper. And if you keep going that way, we are ignoring macro forces that happen in our industry, which have to do with increasing volumes, more languages, and the fact that talent is fleeing in the industry. Today, I had a conversation with a translator that essentially is looking for a job.
How? It's 10 a.m. You've been talking to translators already.
Yes, and it's a translator looking for a job.
There was someone in the comments section, I think, that was promoting their services. People. There's translators out there looking for jobs.
Yeah, and what is happening is that they want to get stability because the price pressure is affecting them significantly.
Oh, you're saying they're looking to exit. They're looking to get a day job. They're looking to.
The reason why I chose this title as the Great Renegotiation is based on the Great Resignation, or the big quit that is happening in all industries, especially North America, but in other places.
Mm-hmm.
People get out of the industry, and sometimes they prefer not to work rather than doing a job that is not fulfilling, or it's not paying them enough, right? So I'll be a mother. I'll take care of my kids. Why do I need to be working until late to get a miserly check every from 4 or 5 or 6 or 10 clients that I need to work with? What the LSP and the client, the final client, doesn't understand from the market dynamics is that a freelance translator cannot survive working with one client only. They're not an employee. They have to have 3, 4, 5 different clients, and frequently they're working with this 4, 5, 6, 10 different clients the same day. So they're working on an environment, they're working on a memo queue environment, then they need to go to Smartling, and then they need to go to MemSource, and then they need to go back to memo queue, and then they need to go to XTM, and they need to be Trados and whatever. And so they need to be moving around, and that switching between systems that don't have the same commands, don't have the same features, takes time and reduces productivity. So one of the things that I asked myself frequently was, why is it that um, the per word productivity, the word count per day, like 2,500 words a day is the productivity of a translator,
That
has been the
that
same
hasn't
in
changed
in
since I've
20
started.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And some people will say, well, that's too much. But if you're working only in one environment on one type of text, you can get to 10,000 words in a day. I've heard stories of people that have used their own machine translation and things, and were able to get productivities over 20,000 words a day. But they need to write a report about the reviews. They need to answer the email from the project manager. They need to issue an invoice. There are so many other tasks involved, and there is this switching from one environment to the other, that that productivity is not absurdly low, but it could be absurdly higher if we were in a more structured environment, right? So there are many elements that affect this challenge, the productivity challenge. But the executive tells the production people, hey, we're spending all this money on machine translation. Let's do post editing. And now the new conversation is that, oh, let's pay post editing by the edit distance, because it assumes that the translator, because the translator, and this is the absurd environment that we're in, because the translator didn't change anything, they assumed that there was no work done. And it's quite the opposite. Sometimes not changing things requires a very attentive review of the content, and you need that validation, because it's like, I think I wrote in the article, is that that day that one thing goes wrong, it only takes is one thing to go wrong, the whole house of cards crumbles, and people get pissed, because clients want to buy the lowest price. And then another myth that we have in our industry is that you can sell different levels of quality, is that oh, you have, I don't know, platinum, gold, and silver, or you have fast
Basic.
and cheap,
Yeah.
and yeah, expensive and
Basic quality,
slow.
advanced marketing
Ex-
quality. God, I hate this term, marketing quality, right? Like, this
yeah,
is one of my biggest pet peeves is, I mean, the term marketing translation is obviously a term that was developed by an excellent salesperson, or perhaps an excellent marketer, because I feel, and your mileage will vary, your experience is going to be different out there, guys, but, I've seen it used all too much as basically just an excuse to charge more for a good translation. And really, when we're selling translations, the translation should be good. I hate negotiating about quality because,
no, the expectation, and that's exactly the point. The expectation is that the quality is always going to be perfect,
right,
and but they want to pay the lowest price, and then you say, oh, but this happened because you chose translation with only 1.5 review cycles, not with the 3 that we recommend, and then this is why there is this mistake. And the client is going to say, I don't give a shit. I bought translation, and it's supposed to be perfect. It's not their responsibility. So again, we spend a lot of time talking about price discounts and escaping from the real conversation, which is value. The point that I want to make here is that I started saying that we should say no for price reductions, especially now at this stage, and this takes courage, because we're always all afraid of losing work and
it take,
going down. But I
takes
mean,
courage to say no to the
takes
client. It
courage
takes
to say no.
courage to walk away from a
Yeah,
client. We were talking, we had an
but
office hours just yesterday, you and I, where we were advising one of our LSP clients to walk away from something.
exactly, because it doesn't make any sense. It will cost you more money to and hey, I'm not smarter than anybody. I worked for a client for 3 years, losing money because I wanted to have Hewlett Packard in my client list, and I thought that this was going to give me more credibility and
well, plus
generate
wasn't your
more
ex-wife
business.
the localization director?
Yeah, and then you get to the point that you say, hey, this is too much of a marketing cost, right?
Yeah.
We all make those decisions, and they're not necessarily the best, but we learn from those processes.
Yeah.
But I think that a point here that it's important in this great renegotiation is the renegotiation part. And and what I would like to highlight is that the first thing is that if the client is asking you to reduce your price, you waited too long. It's too late, right?
Right.
The time to renegotiate is not now. It's not at the end of the year when the vendor manager is coming and asking you for a price reduction. The time to renegotiate is in February. It's in April. It's at the time that the client is not expecting to have this conversation. And you start the conversation by saying, hey, our costs have gone up. And it's true, because translators don't want, the translators are saying no. The way that they say no is that if you offer them a very low price, they just don't bid on that project. They don't accept it. They say, I'm busy, I have another project.
Yeah.
And they're going to filter, which they do, I can tell you, they're going to filter and prioritize the clients that pay more, their clients. Right. So this is it's a market where there is scarcity of talent. For many languages, there are fewer qualified translators than the market needs, and that number is not increasing. That number is actually maybe decreasing in a net pattern. I mean, the volume goes up, the number of translators doesn't go up at the same speed, so your net result is zero growth or negative growth in the number of translators per word available in the market, if you want to calculate it that way. So the moment to negotiate is first outside of the negotiation cycle, the moment to talk about price increases. And this is not only for the single language vendors negotiating with the multi-language vendors, it's for the multi-language vendors to negotiate with the clients. That moment where you have a QBR, where you have a meeting with your client, is the moment that you're going to say, costs are going up. There's a lot of price pressure in the market to increase prices. Our productivity gains are not as high as we expected. And one of the points that I make in the article is that companies are making more money than ever. Corporate profits are at an all-time high. So it's the time to use that thing. The argument from the client that you're under pressure and you need to reduce cost, it's artificial. It's just a bad habit that organizations have to try to reduce the cost of all things every year. There are some things that prices don't go down. It's called price elasticity. We have reached the the bottom level, I believe, in where how elastic our prices can be. Look at gas, right? Gas is something that is quite inelastic. It doesn't vary as easily and as fast as other commodities. In any way, the moment is outside of the negotiation cycle. And also another thing to keep in mind is that this is a negotiation that should not be happening between vendor managers and owners or salespeople. It should be a conversation that should be starting with project managers and stakeholders on the client
now
side.
You're speaking my language. I'm always talking about, because you know how many LSP clients come to us, and what's the number one thing people ask Nimdzi for help with, Renato?
Growth.
period. Like that's what people come to us for growth. How do I grow my program inside my enterprise? How do I grow my reputation? How do I grow my LSP? How do I grow my revenue? And they all want to talk about growth. And usually what that means is they want to buy some sales training from us or sales consulting. And whenever I'm on one of those calls, I always say, whoa, wait, stop. Because before we go out and hire 5 new salespeople and bring us in for a week-long training and all of that stuff, what have you done to talk to your project managers? And what have you done to train up your PMs with some just baseline level communication skills, baseline level sales, account management skills? Because project managers, I'm of course biased. I'm a project manager by background. But project managers are truly the front line on for your key customers.
And the conversation is different than the sales and cost conversation.
Right.
It's a conversation that is about production. It's about real metrics. It's about something that is happening in the real world. I always like to talk about pre-sales and after sales, right? The pre-sales conversation is the dating part where you promise everything and you can do everything and you can negotiate, and there is a certain drive for business to happen. But the after sales conversation is the real world. It's where things are happening, where challenges are really faced. So the conversation needs to happen in an existing client relationship. You can only increase price if you're in an existing client relationship. It's at the QBR. It's at the client annual review with your client. It's the moment where you open your kimono and share your data and talk about the challenges that you have to achieve the goals that the client has proposed to you. And one of the things that it's important to keep in mind when it comes to this conversation is that these conversations do not need to be linear, okay?
What do you mean by that?
By that, I mean that let's say that you're doing 20 languages or doing 5 languages with a client. You can talk about increasing half of them and reducing the price on 2 of them. It does, or maintaining your price in a couple of them, and you don't. It doesn't need to be all or nothing and a number for everything. It's actually going to be more realistic if you break it down to the reality of your issues. I think that I mentioned that German, Portuguese, and I forgot what was the other language that I mentioned in my article, that where prices, because of inflation, different inflation rates, because of exchange rate variability, because of market pressure, have different how to say rates that you could apply to
different
your
pricing tiers, pricing structures, stuff like that.
And if you ask me, and I don't know if anybody asks, I'm not following the questions.
Oh, I'm going to get to the chat. Lots of good stuff in chat. So as soon as you're done here.
So one of the things that I forgot what I was going to say. So let's go.
All right, good segue into chat. Good segue into chat here. Lots of good conversations going on over here, guys. Let me see if I can bring them up on screen. I can't bring them up individually, but just starting at the top here. Daniel Wiedemann from Eclectic Language Orchestra says, having spent a good amount of time as an enterprise buyer, spot on. Price decreases coming down the pike are very often just for the hell of it, in rare cases due to a budget haircut, and tend to be tied to show progress / improvement / ROI on those annual review QBR slides. So that goes back to our previous conversation about, people asking for price reductions without any actual reasoning behind it. We got Daniela Watt.
I think that Winnie has a question here.
Winnie has a good one.
Do you have any case?
Well, I was trying to do first come, first serve, but you've screwed that one up.
I like this question here. Do you have any case studies of how LPMs, localization project managers, on the client side successfully convincing their CFOs against this annual exercise to cut costs by 10% for their spend on LSPs. Yeah, my experience is that ops folks typically comply with the CFO directive. Absolutely. And Winnie this is the part in my article that I talk about people being afraid. Keep in mind that localization project managers in large organizations tend not to be business people. They tend to be language people. They tend to be not necessarily expert managers. But the best line that I've heard from a client that had received this request to cut costs by 10, 20, whatever number percent it was, she responded, "Why?" And
and there's nothing equally important to that why is what comes after it. What comes after the why? Nothing.
First of all, they don't know, right?
Yeah.
Why do we need to reduce the cost by 10%? And keep asking why do we need? Because what is going to
channel your inner 3-year-old. Why?
If you're a localization project manager inside a client, if you do your homework, you know what is your contribution to the growth of the company. And what I see more and more is that international growth is higher than domestic growth, with rare exceptions, right? And if it is not, companies are leaving money on the table. I went to the financials of a company at the beginning of this year, and I was talking to a localization project manager who was having a hard time getting $1 million to localize. And this is a $1 billion company. And we looked at the growth rates. The domestic growth of the company was something around 7%. And the international growth of the company was 30%. The moment you present data like that, is when you get the ability to get more funds and negotiate a better position in the organization. Very seldom have I seen companies where the international growth lags domestic growth, unless it's a new product that is launched or something that is not localized, or the company only have a few products that are localized and so on. There are exceptions. But I can guarantee you that in 90% of the situations, you can make a business case for growth if you look at the data in your company. And the CFO organization is your best friend.
Yeah, and when he's responding, saying that the CFOs that she does talk to are asking, like, well, sure, but if we're going to do this, then we need to see an efficiency increase. So what's the response to that?
We need to see what?
An efficiency increase.
Improvement.
Yeah.
Oh, the efficiency is not necessarily in the production side.
Yeah.
The efficiency.
My response to that is we need to give ourselves more credit, because there is, if you're worth your salt as a localization project manager, I guarantee you you have efficiencies that you can be reporting, and
the point is
it goes back to storytelling. Essentially, we talk a lot about storytelling here at Nimdzi.
What would be the cost of not doing it? It's like just the conversation that you have with the story about the HR person and the CEO of the company. What if we pay for our employees MBA and they leave the company, and the CEO asks, why? What if we don't and they stay?
Yeah.
Right. And it's pretty much the same level of conversation. You need to have mature conversations inside the organization in order to be able to fend off these things. And prices go up in different parts of the organization. If you are a localization project manager in an organization trying to find funds, find out what are the things where prices go up. I guarantee you that nobody negotiates with Google Ads for more efficiency or productivity, because the prices are not set by Google. The prices are auctioned. It's a market where the prices are always going up, right? The point is that it is an attitude.
Lawson down here in the comments here, who says he wants to edit his post. So sorry if this isn't right, but Lawson Stapleton. Wow, what time is it? You must have moved already, Lawson. Friend of the show. He was a guest on Nimdzi Insights. Says, when it comes to the cost and quality equation, we have lost our defense. The preservation of the LSP community has been dissolved by corporates who are not linguistically inclined, treating translations like a product or blah blah blah, something other than a service. Like,
Yes.
what do we say to that?
What I say to that is, no, I disagree. And the reason why I disagree is that it doesn't matter. Any business, there are three ways that you can affect profit, right? You increase your price, you reduce your cost, you increase your productivity. There's no other way for you to affect that. It doesn't matter if it is translation, if it is shoe polishing, if it is computer repair, the formula is going to be the same. So the conversation needs to shift. It doesn't, quality is not a metric. Is not a business metric. Quality is subjective. Quality is something that is taken for granted. You deliver excellent quality. You don't negotiate quality. I am like the U.S. government. The U.S. government doesn't negotiate with terrorists. Translation companies don't negotiate quality. That's the position that you need to have. And you don't talk about quality. The best thing that you can do about quality, don't talk about it. If somebody asks you, how about your quality? I don't discuss it. I don't talk about it. We deliver it. And the point about quality in all the relationships that I've had over this almost 40 years is that quality is measured by the quality of your service. It's not how good your translation is, it's how well you respond when there is a mistake. How well do you address a problem, a challenge, a change, a criticism, and that's what quality is in the mind of the client. If you're a buyer who is buying 25 or 25 or 35 languages, your customer will be able to judge the quality of 1, 2, or 3 languages, not more than that, because they have other things to do and they don't know as many languages as they are translating into. So the value judgment of quality is a conversation between translators. Tucker and I worked on a project with a client that was spending millions in LQA. We did an audit of the organization. We looked at their processes, and they were spending, I don't know, 60, 70% of their internal effort on quality controls. And we went and we looked at what was the perception of the customer. Actually, I think
and
I saw
just for color,
on Monday an article about that.
Yeah.
But the perception of quality from the client was it didn't make any difference for them. If they put a lot of effort or no effort. Yes, Tucker.
Yeah, but just I mean, to that point, I get where you're going, and I've heard all of your sermons before. But Catherine Santora makes a good point. Lots of quality related, and Joshua, I'm getting to you because I want to talk about that. But she says lots of quality related questions on those RFPs, though. So it's all well and good to say don't talk about quality. How do you respond to these structured RFPs that you need to respond to quality, though? Yeah, got you, didn't I?
Okay. This is turning into a consulting project. Catherine, call us and we'll talk about it. But there are ways for you to
there
address
are ways,
that,
yeah.
right?
Okay.
So
maybe not in the next 15 minutes.
An RFP is
it's more about just balancing the reality of the situation. Like, how do you balance, like, I mean, the customer might have wrong assumptions, but they're still the customer, right? So how do you balance that need to get the customer what they want and make accommodations and compromise?
Yeah, but Tucker, we're getting out of the scope of this conversation,
hey, it's
which
my
is
show.
Essentially about price negotiation.
All right.
And price negotiation is something that you need to do. You do with an existing client.
Fair enough. Yeah, let's not talk about quality.
Yeah. If we go into the quality rabbit hole, it's one of those things that one of my claims to fame in this industry is that I made a presentation at the ATA. It's like 15 years ago, saying that quality doesn't matter, and people still say that I'm the guy who says that quality doesn't matter. And the content of the presentation was essentially quality matters so much that you don't talk about it, right? But anyway, let's get out of that conversation.
All right.
Do we have any other questions?
Yeah, I wanted to get to Joshua here regarding Tucker's thoughts on marketing translation. Taos in 2018 officially coined that service and term and differentiated it from transcreation. Marketing translation stays loyal to the brand regardless of cultural differences. Yeah, I'm not buying it, Josh. I still think it's. I don't.
I buy it, and I see that there has been, and it's very good to talk about marketing translation as being a more creative translation, that you're tied to the original.
Here's why you buy it and I don't, because you're a sales guy. You're a sales background, and I'm PM background.
And transcreation is something that clients think that they want, but they can't afford, or they don't know what it really is.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So I think that it's a very good,
very specific
approach.
Use cases.
Yeah. It's a very good approach when you differentiate. When the client asks you that they want transcreation, in reality, what they're talking is that they want a marketing translation of the product that is not a technical translation. It's more of a creative translation, but it's still tied to the original. You can change the order of the words, but you cannot change the words. Let's put it this way, just to oversimplify. And I agree. I understand your resistance, but it's a good topic to differentiate the two things. But anyway, let's go back to the negotiation phase. One of the elements that you need to have in your arsenal, one of the things that needs to be mentioned, is that there is a talent shortage, not only in numbers but also in specialization in
talk about that, because this talent shortage, this is a hot topic going on out there. Is there, by your estimation, what camp are you in? Is there a talent shortage, or is there a shortage of people willing to pay a fair wage?
There's there's a shortage.
It's a loaded question, I know.
Yes, there's a shortage of talent there are two reasons. One is demographic, right? The population is not growing at the same speed, at the same rate as the content. The content is growing much faster than the population. The other factor is that it takes time to develop talent. I've had this conversation numerous times where people want to talk about price standardization and a junior translator is less productive and has less quality than a senior translator. It's experience. Experience matters in this industry, where the only measure that we use to evaluate translators is number of errors, right? So it's kind of ridiculous. Is you translate 1 million words, and what is going to differentiate you from the other translators is how many errors you have made, how many major errors, critical errors, and things like that. So it is obvious, and it is natural, and this is how the world turns, that more experienced translators will make fewer errors, theoretically, if they're working in their environment and so on. So it takes time. When you've been you just came out of school, you think you're super smart and the world will bow to you, and when you get to 10 years of experience, that's when you realize that, wow, I'm just starting to learn how this thing works, right? So there is it takes time. It takes mentoring, it takes preparation, it takes education, and it takes practice, a lot of practice. Translation is one of those skills that you develop by doing more and more and more and more. And you cannot talk about a single price. It's there are so many dimensions
Lots
in
of
this
moving parts,
conversation.
and this is
Yeah.
why and we get a lot of office hours. Notice we said we got a lot of office hours of people wanting to talk about pricing and pricing strategy and all that. We don't publish a lot about pricing. We don't. We try, and this is my fault because I'm the guy here at Nimdzi that said I don't want to publish stuff about pricing because it has the potential for misuse out there. It has the potential to be weaponized, and there are so many different pricing strategies, so many different rates and ranges that are used, and they're highly dependent upon many different things: content type, geography, goal. And it's just there's no one size fits all when it comes to pricing. We're a highly fragmented industry. Everyone's got their niche, and every niche has their own pricing. We are coming up on it, guys. We got about 8 minutes left to the hour. I don't know what you got going on after this, Renato, but I wanted to get to one last Winnie. Winnie is our chat winner of the day. Congratulations to Winnie on this, because we've just been going back and forth with her. But she says, and for those of you that don't know Winnie, go connect with her on LinkedIn in the networking tab. She's great. She says, can we create a class on quote unquote how to talk to CFOs to help our colleagues on the client side? That will impact how client side orgs work with LSPs, which in turn will positively impact, hopefully, how much LSPs can afford to pay linguists. And I want to start with I want to take first crack at this, Renato. I want to start with one thing that we say to client side directors all the time is you need to be asking your boss how you're going to spend more money, not less money. You need to be going into it with confidence and an attitude of growth and an attitude of like, for every $1 that we spend, we're getting $5 back. We're a growth engine. So start making plans on how to spend more money. It's not your money. It's your boss's money anyways, right? And also to answer that question, we do actually here at Nimdzi, we run some workshops directed towards, like, our LSP clients will never see these because they're directed towards client-side individuals. And, you know, Miguel Sepulveda, those of you that are familiar with Miguel, you know that he's legit. He's a globalization director over at King and also runs a blog called yolocalizo.com. Go check it out. Subscribe to that newsletter because it's really good stuff. And he talks a lot about setting up KPI and metrics ecosystems on the client side, of course, and also this concept of storytelling, which is, I don't know, I'm hearing that more and more. It's not enough just to be data driven. It's you need to be able to put a good story around it, because how you talk to the C-suite is going to be very different from how you talk to other people, because they're interested in different things. All right, that's my spiel, Renato. What would you say to this? Like, would that even help, having a course for the client side or having an education?
Yes, I think it's a workshop. It's like it's not that long, and the arguments are usually learn to talk about business and not about language. Learn to talk about the client and the client's client, the company's client, instead of talking about the budget, right? Look at, associate your performance and your metrics with the company's uh, annual goals. Get into the habit, if you work in a public company, get into the habit of reading the annual report, the 10K form, and finding out what your CEO is telling the shareholders of the company, because the shareholders are the real owners of the company. And if you speak the language of what the CEO is telling the shareholders, you have no idea of how many times I go into these annual reports and I find international growth is a priority for us, or we believe that expanding to international markets will improve our margins, and align your conversation with that. Make this the key thing, Winnie, is for, and I tell this to all my friends and all the people that go into a localization management position, is make friends with somebody in that reports the CFO, because those people have the numbers and the direction of the company, and associate all your metrics with the CFO metrics. The CFO is the CEO's best friend. So get into that conversation. Those are the people that you need to be talking to.
I'll say the
Not
CFO is the
people who
CEO's
really
best
know.
friend if the company's currently profitable. Otherwise, that dynamic could be different.
If the company is not profitable, the CFO is also his best friend because he's telling him where to cut costs.
Fair enough.
And you need to say that this is not an area where you need to cut costs, right?
Fair enough.
So the summary of this conversation is talk less about translation, talk more about business. Talk less about cost, talk more about value.
Yep.
Talk less about price, talk more about cost for you, right? And you're saying align. There's one thing that I learned in negotiation tactics is to use the word fair as much as possible, especially if your client is American, because Americans learn that they need to be fair in school and in other countries, at least in the countries where I studied, in the 5 countries where I went to school, I never heard the word fair being something important. Right? So make sure that when you're negotiating, is it fair that I need to make a profit? Is it fair that I need to, in order to maintain what I'm doing, is not to do more and make more. In order to maintain what I'm doing, I need to adjust my price. If I want to do more, I need to charge more.
Fair enough.
There are many tactics. Yes.
No, I'm just saying we got 3 minutes left here, and I know people got to get out of here. So but I don't want to cut you off. You're on a roll.
Yeah. Well, the thing that I want to reinforce is that dissociate the conversation from the budget time. Change the calendar. Start negotiating price increases outside of the traditional budget cycle. I have done it. I'm not speaking in hypothetical terms. I have been in situations where I had to negotiate, and I mentioned Hewlett Packard here. It was the first time that I had decided to fire my client because I wasn't making any money with that client. And I meet with the client and say, hey, I need to stop working for you because we're not making any money with the translations with you. And the vendor manager from the client says, what would be the price for you to continue working? And I asked for a 20% increase, and she said, fine. And I said, what? What if I had asked for 50?
So it can be done, ladies and gentlemen.
It can be done. And I've been in situations, much bigger deals with Silicon Valley, big player, where I had to increase prices by over 15%. And the client was fine once we justified it. Again, outside of the contract negotiation, outside of the budget cycle, at the time when you are in production, when you're having challenges. Because then you are having the conversation outside of the bubble, where, going back to Winnie's question, outside of that bubble, you're not going to get the pushback, or why are you special? Why are you so special? Everybody else is cutting. I've been in that position, trust me. Everybody else is cutting costs. Why are you so special? And outside of that bubble, you are special. And I think that this is a great way to end this conversation.
It is a great way to end, but we are now officially over time, guys. I want to kick this off because I've been slacking about this, but let's get to Tuck's takeaways, of course, this section that we do at the end. Takeaway number 1, these are notes that I take during the call. Translators and LSPs need to learn to say no. This is what we were just talking about, of course. So do enterprise directors, though. So do enterprise directors. You need to learn how to say no, and it's usually a no or a no and here's why to your stakeholders. Oh, next we have Tuck's takeaway number 2, human in the loop versus tech-enabled human. This was something that I really liked talking about today, because you hear this human in the loop, human in the loop, human in the loop all over the place. And our industry, our profession is inherently people-centric. It's inherently about humans. We help humans connect to other humans. And I think we take that human out of the process at our own peril. Lastly, let's see what I wrote down for Tuck's takeaway number 3 here. We have don't talk about quality. Quality is expected. quality is expected. If you're going to do something, do it. If a job's worth doing, it's worth doing right. If my dad taught me anything growing up, it would be that. If a job's worth doing, it's worth doing right. Don't talk about quality. Talk about things that talk about true differentiators in that. So with that,
Well, the most important takeaway for me, Tucker, that you didn't put there is negotiate out of the negotiation cycle.
Yeah, I should put that one there.
That's what I want to emphasize.
Don't
Change
wait
the
until you're
calendar.
talking to procurement. If you're negotiating with procurement, you're fighting an uphill battle. So get those PMs trained on some basic account management skills. I'm telling you, it's going to pay off.
And for the buyers that are listening to this, on Monday, I'm going to be speaking in the translated workshop with a webinar about their T index, which is a very interesting metric that should be useful for buyers, how to calculate potential market growth just by adding statistics and it's an interesting calculator. They're going to do a demo. I've seen it before, but the webinar is really good. There are a bunch of people from the industry on the client side speaking there.
So that's it, guys. Fill up your calendars. You got T index, which is that's going to be a good one. Trust me on that one. And likewise, it's always fun to talk to Adam Asness over at Lingoport. So as soon as you're done here, head on over, fill out that Zoom registration, and do with that. So anyways, thank you. Thank you, Renato. Please, everybody, join me. Show your appreciation in chat or using the reaction buttons for my colleague, Renato Beninatto, who joined us today to talk about this. I'm sure if you have questions or comments or arguments or disagreements, please send them our way. info@nimdzi.com if you're interested in any of those workshops or anything that we were talking about earlier. And no great way to end this today. It's just we're out of time. So if you enjoyed this experience, join us next time. Actually, we don't have anything next time, so don't worry about it. But I just talked to a few people. We got some interesting stuff coming up, hopefully before the end of the year, but definitely moving into 2022. We got some interesting programming for you today. So I'd like to end these things by saying I appreciate my guest today, Renato Beninatto. I appreciate everybody out there who helps contribute to Nimdzi research, whether that's filling out surveys or talking to us or just asking for help, asking for guidance, because every time we talk to you guys, we learn a little bit more about the industry ourselves. And last but not least, certainly, I appreciate you guys, the audience. I appreciate all of the activity that we had in chat today, the questions, the comments, and the networking. Feel free to see who else was signed in today in the networking tab. Send them a LinkedIn request, a connection request. Build your network. This is a people-driven industry, so make sure that you're taking full advantage of that. And with that, I will say, we will see you next time. I very much look forward to it. My name is Tucker Johnson. This has been Nimdzi Live.